القلوب عن مطالعة الغيوب فقد ابتلي المؤمنون وزلزلوا زلزالا شديدا إذ يقول المنافقون والذين في قلوبهم مرض ما وعدنا الله ورسوله إلا غرورا فثبتنا وانصرنا وسخر لنا هذا البحر كما سخرت البحر لموسى وسخرت النار لإبراهيم وسخرت الجبال والحديد لداود وسخرت الريح والشياطين والجن لسليمان وسخر لنا كل بحر هو لك في الأرض والسماء والملك والملكوت وبحر الدنيا وبحر الآخرة وسخر لنا كل شيء يا من بيده ملكوت كل شيء كافى يا عين صاد كافى يا عين صاد كافى يا عين صاد انصرنا فإنك خير الناصرين وافتح لنا فإنك خير الفاتحين واغفر لنا فإنك خير الغافرين وارحمنا فإنك خير الراحمين وارزقنا فإنك خير الرازقين واهدنا ونجنا من القوم الظالمين وهب لنا ريحا كما هي في علمك وانشرها علينا من خزائن رحمتك واحملنا بها حمل الكرامة مع السلامة والعافية في الدين والدنيا والآخرة إنك على كل شيء قدير. اللهم يسر لنا أمورنا مع الراحة لقلوبنا وأبداننا والسلامة والعافية في ديننا ودنيانا وكن لنا صاحبا في سفرنا وخليفة في أهلنا وطمس على وجوه أعدائنا وانصرهم على مكانتهم فلا يستطيعون المضي ولا المجيء إلينا ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء وسقناهم على مكانتهم فما يضيع ولا يرجعون والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم غافلون لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون شاهت الوجوه وعنت الوجوه للحي القيوم وقد خاب من حمل ظلما طاسين حاميم عين سين قاف مرج البحرين يلتقيان بينهما برزخ لا يبغيان حاميم 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 ثم الأمر وجاء النصر فعلينا لا ينصرون حاميم تنزيل الكتاب من الله العزيز العليم غافر الذنب وقابل التوب شديد العقاب بالطول لا إله إلا هو إليه المصير بابنا تبارك حيطاننا ياسين سقفنا كافى يا عين صاد كفايتنا حميم عين سين قاف حمايتنا فسيكفيكهم الله السميع العليم ستر العرش مسبول علينا وعين الله ناظرة إلينا بحول الله لا يقدر علينا والله من ورائهم محيط بل هو قرآن مجيد في لوح محفوظ فالله خير حافظا وهو أرحم الراحمين فالله خير حافظا وهو أرحم الراحمين فالله خير حافظا وأرحم الراحمين إن ولي الله الذي نزل الكتاب وهو يتولى الصالحين حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم حسبي الله لا توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون يا الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما الله لا إله له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض من ذا الذي يشفع عنده إلا بإذنه يعلم ما بين أيديهم وما خلفهم لا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء وسع كرسيه السماوات والأرض ولا يؤوده حفظهما وهو العلي العظيم يا الله يا نور يا حق يا مبين اكسر نورك وعلمني من علمك وأفهمني عنك وأسمعني منك وبصرني بك وأقمني وارفني الطريق إليك وهونها علي بفضلك وألبسني لباس التقوى منك إنك على كل شيء قدير يا سميع يا عليم يا حليم يا علي يا عظيم يا الله اسمع دعائي بخصائص لطفك آمين أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات كلها من شر ما خلق أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات كلها من شر ما خلق بكلمات الله التامات كلها من شر ما خلق يا عظيم السلطان يا قديم الإحسان يا دائم النعمة يا باسط الرزق يا كثير الخيرات يا واسع العطاء يا دافع البلاء ويا سامع الدعاء حاضرا ليس عند شيء خفي اللطف يا لطيف الصنع من لا يعجل اقض حاجتي برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم إنك تعلم ما نحن فيه وما نطلبه ونرتجيه في أمرنا كله فيسر لنا ما نحن فيه من سفرنا وما نطلبه من حوائجنا وقرب علينا وسلمنا من العلل والآفات ولا تجعل الدنيا أكبر همنا ولا مبلغ ولا تسلط علينا من لا يرحمنا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين وصلى على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا يا كريم نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك نعوذ بك من النار لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا يا كريم نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك الجنة نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار نشهد أن لا نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا تحب العفو عنا اللهم إنك عفو كريم
سريري من يقرأ مرحبا Our book, just a reminder, the books will be here by Monday, inshallah. We're on page 13. Bismillah.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. The inward and the outward, or religion and judgment. No one disputes that the commands of the Islamic revealed law on the whole are divided into two categories. Outward statements and actions such as fasting, praying, enjoining the right and forbidding the wrong, working for the benefit of the Muslims, and that which is connected to the soul and the heart, such as sincerity, humility, love, and hatred for the sake of Allah, fear of Allah, the Exalted, dread and hope for His reward and His pleasure. Likewise, the prohibitions on the whole are divided into two categories: outward statements and actions such as the prohibition against murder, theft, fornication, backbiting, and slander, and that which is connected to the soul or heart, such as the prohibition against arrogance, vanity, ostentation, malice, bearing grudges, and being attached to worldly embellishments and base desires. It is also not disputed by any Muslim that the Muslim's outward acts of obedience cannot be sound and acceptable to Allah and the Exalted, if he is not striving and focusing on those other acts of obedience that are connected to the soul and heart. If there is no sincerity towards Allah in his heart, his outward acts of obedience, whatever they may be, will not bring him nearer to Allah. If his soul has not been refined with the distinguished morals that Allah commands Muslims to have, no matter how pious or righteous he may make himself appear to the other people, it will not benefit him at all. The heart that is dominated by inclinations of arrogance, grudges, and malice cannot carry out acts of obedience of worship with a true sense of slavehood to Allah the Exalted. If the tributaries of slavehood between the Muslim's heart and his outward obedience are cut off, it is simply not possible for him to draw nearer to Allah. There is nothing to protect him from the slippery slopes of this world and the traps and snares of the shayateen, and his own base desires. It is like sticking fresh fruit to a dry tree. How long will it be before they wither and die? The rulings of the Islamic revealed law being divided into these two categories is one of the most important matters that Allah the Exalted's book draws our attention to, and in various ways. Allah has said, وَذَرُوا ظَاهِرَ إِثْمُ. Anyone read this? وَبَاطِنًا إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَكْسِبُونَ الْإِثْمَ سَيُجْزَوْنَ بِمَا كَانُوا يَقْتَرِفُونَ. Abandon wrong action, outward and inward, those who commit. He has also said, قُلْ تَعَالَوْا أَتْلُوا مَا حَرَّمَ رَبُّكُمْ أَلَّا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شيئا وبالوالدين إحسانا ولا تقتلوا أولادكم من إملاق نحن نرزقكم وإياهم ولا تقربوا الفواحش ما ظهر منها وما بطن. Say, come and I will recite to you what your Lord has commanded you, that you do not associate anything with him, that you be good to your parents, that you may not kill your children because of poverty. We will provide that you not approach in outward or inward. And on top of that, he subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, فَمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو لِقَاءَ رَبِّهِ فَلْيَعْمَلْ عَمَلًا صَالِحًا وَلَا يُشْرِكْ بِعِبَادَةِ رَبِّهِ أَحَدًا. So let him who hopes to meet his Lord act rightly and do not associate anyone in the worship of his Lord. Because removing oneself from associating partners with Allah in one's worship is the peak of all inward rulings. All the rulings of the revealed law depend on the heart being purified of inward sins and being adorned with praiseworthy morals and virtuous traits, And this is one of the clearest things that he can be seen from Allah, the Exalted's book and the Sunnah of His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا. He who purifies it has succeeded. He who covers it with disobedience has failed. The Prophet ﷺ says in the agreed upon hadith, indeed there is a lump of flesh in the body. If it is sound, the whole body is sound. And if it is corrupt, the whole body is corrupt. Indeed, it is the heart. He subhanahu wa ta'ala also, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, also says in what has been related by Muslim Ibn Majah and others, Allah does not look at your appearances or your bodies. Rather, He looks at your hearts. If this fact is obvious to you, and that is a clear fact that should not be lost on any Muslim, the means of expressing it might differ, and it is very straightforward discussion. Some people discuss it by using the terms inward and outward, others call it religion and judgment, and still others call it the law and the essence, haqiqah. All of these terms are appropriate if the correct meaning is understood. If someone prays and he fulfills all the conditions and pillars, that is considered in the outward sense. In terms of judgment and the law, he has fulfilled Allah's right over him. If, however, he performed those acts out of ostentation or vanity, or while holding some belief that would render him outside the fold of Islam, then he would not be regarded as having fulfilled Allah, the Exalted's right in the inward sense, in terms of religion and in view of the essence. Therefore, there is outward and inward religion and judgment, and essence and law. They can agree in terms of ruling. This happens when the outward conditions and pillars which are regulated and judged in this world coincide with the inward obligations and conditions which are only regulated and judged by the sustainer of the skies and the earth. Such an action is accepted by Allah, and it is accepted in the worldly sense. If the conditions are unfulfilled on either side, the action is rejected, both outwardly and inwardly.
الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والجنة للموحدين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الخلق والمرسلين نبينا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. All praise belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the choicest of blessings and salutations upon our master Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Al-Imam al-Shaheed al-Dr. Muhammad Saeed Ramadan al-Bhuti, the author of the text that we are covering, in yesterday's passage he spoke about, or his introduction rather, he spoke about the reason why he wrote this book. And in a nutshell, he is presenting to you and I what the root cause of the degeneration of Muslims around the globe is. The reason why Muslims are degenerating, and the reason why Muslims are not progressing, and the reason why Muslims are not moving forward, and the reasons why Muslims are still suffering, and the reasons why we are like pawns on a chessboard, the reason why our brothers are still being killed in whatever country it may be around the world, whether it is Gaza or Yemen or you name it. The reason why this degeneration and this sense of hopelessness exists within the Ummah of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam relates to the inner. It relates to the inner. That Allah referred in the Quran when Allah said, وَذَرُوا ظَاهِرَ الْإِثْمِ وَبَاطِنَهُ, leave sin, the apparent sin as well as the hidden sin. And therefore the title of his book is Batinul Itham, inward sin. He identified this to be the problem. In the chapter that he commences with today, to explain this concept further to you and I, he wants you and I to appreciate and understand that there are actions that are known to be outward, and there are actions that are known to be inward. And he highlights this point over the pages that we just read. He makes an interesting point at the beginning that the concept of inward and outward is there's no difference within the Ummah regarding this. There's agreement among the Ummah of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam that there are actions that relate to the inward and actions that relate to the outward. He made the examples in terms of prohibitions relating to the outward, He made the examples of murder, theft, fornication, backbiting, and slander. These are all things that you do with your limbs, right? It does not relate to the heart. I steal with my hands. I speak ill of someone with my tongue. I swear with my tongue. I backbite with my tongue. I fornicate with my body parts. But there are also prohibitions that relate to the soul and the heart. And you'll find that they often use the term soul and heart almost as if they are interchangeable, because it refers to the same thing. Within the heart, the qalb is the ruh, and within the ruh is the sir. Those who are familiar with the dhikr of Imam al-Aidarus, rahimahullah tabaraka wa ta'ala, the dhikr al-Aidarus, Imam Aidarus al-Akbar, used to read daily 12,000 times La ilaha illallah, and 12,000 times Allah, Allah, and 12,000 times Hu. And therefore, someone generally initiated to the path of our mashayikh, they start with the dhikr al-Aidarus. وذكر الأيدروس القطبي أجلى عن القلب الصدى للصادقين. The dhikr of Imam al-Aidarus removes removes the stains of rust from the heart, if you are truthful. And the kalima la ilaha illallah is the key to the heart, and Hu, Allah, Allah is the key to the soul, and Hu is the... So the qalb, the heart, and the soul is often referred to interchangeably, because in essence the soul forms part of the heart, as how the sir forms part of the soul, and so forth. As all one, forming different parts of one. And that is something to keep in mind, because sometimes Dr. Bhuti, all the ulama, when they're speaking about the inner and the outer, sometimes they refer to the heart, sometimes they refer to the soul. Both are the same thing. So the outer would be the limbs, and the inner would be the inside, the heart. So you see, prohibitions in relation to the heart is going to be arrogance, ostentation. Ostentation is a nice word for... What's ostentation? Showing off, riya. Malice. Malice is an intense form of hatred. So both is hatred, but when it becomes intense, that I start planning to harm. And similarly, he said in relation to what was the first thing in other examples that he made was or rather he said, if there is no sincerity towards Allah in the heart, his outward acts of obedience, whatever they may be, will not bring him nearer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he's advising regarding this point. And this is something that we need to become familiar with. What happens is that when we live in a world of zahir, when we live in the world of zahir, we forget the batin. That's just a reality. We forget that there's... The one thing is the batin in relation to my heart and the sins of my heart, and the sicknesses and the ailments of my heart. But in a broader context, because we live in a world where we only see that which is apparent, we only understand things logically. And we sometimes forget that not just in relation to things which are hidden in my heart, in general, this entire cosmos, there's hidden things that we don't see. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has systems in this universe that you and I don't see. And that's also batin, that's also hidden. We know that that one of a means of income is going to work. Manufacturing something, building something, offering a service and earning a salary. I know that that's one type of income, but Allah has stipulated a different type of source of rizq. Right? What's another source of rizq? Having a family member go study deen. Having a family member go memorize the Quran. That's also a way to earn rizq from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? And the Prophet ﷺ said that in relation to two Sahaba, where he said that the one is earning rizq because of the other that is sitting in the masjid and attending classes. So there are systems that are hidden from us. Other examples is sickness. Right? If I get ill, the apparent means of cure is what? Medication. I take the Panado, my headache goes away. I take a omeprazole, is Ridwania. If he has a gas problem, he takes an omeprazole, the gas problem disappears. So that's the zahir. But there's also another system of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala where our Prophet ﷺ told us that a person who is ill, when he gives charity, Allah gives him cure. Right? That's a hidden system. So in a broader sense, we need to appreciate that there are things happening in this world that is hidden from us. In a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, there are people in this world. There are people in this world. They seek Allah's forgiveness for believing males and believing females 27 times in the morning and 27 times in the evening. What do they read? Astaghfirullah lil-mu'minina wal-mu'minat, Astaghfirullah lil-mu'minina wal-mu'minat 27 times in the morning and 27 times in the evening. And then the Prophet said, through those people, Allah gives sustenance to everyone on the lands. Allah has systems that is not seen as hidden in a general sense. And I'm making these examples, even though that's not Dr. Bhuti's objective. Dr. Bhuti is focusing on the heart and the soul. For you and I, just to drive home the concept that there are things that we see and things that we cannot see. That's what I see emanating from my physical limbs. That is the zahir. But the sin that is hidden within my heart, that is the batin. Not only sin, the obedience that is hidden within my heart, that's also the batin. And then Dr. Bhuti emphasizes how these two goes hand in hand. My outward actions cannot be correct and valid if my inward actions is not correct and valid. If I make salah and I fulfill all the arkan of salah, how many arkan of salah are there? Depending how you count them. But there are 17. I fulfill all the 17 arkan. If we had time, I would actually have loved to test everyone's knowledge if they know the arkan of salah. So if you're actually worrying now, if I should ask you to give me the arkan of salah, then it's a sign that you must go study your fiqh. I fulfill all the arkan of salah. Outwardly, everything is intact. But I didn't have sincerity for Allah. Can it be accepted? Not going to be accepted. Another person, he says, I have full sincerity to make salah for the sake of Allah, but he doesn't make the salah. No salah. So Dr. Bhuti emphasizes how the batin, they work together. And both must be focused upon. The reality, however, is that in the world that we are living in, we've become very accustomed to focusing on that which is apparent in all spheres of life. And that which is batin, sometimes it's as if and that's essentially what makes us Muslim. A believer is alladhina yu'minuna bil-ghayb. You believe in that which you can't see. If you're only accountable to believe in that what you can see, then where's your iman? Iman is to believe in that which you cannot see. So, the zahir and the batin. The zahir and the batin. I was at the home of one young boy that was leaving for Umrah. And we mentioned to him that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam is alive in his grave. Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, without any disagreement, believes that Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam is not only alive with his soul in his grave, but his body is as fresh as the day that they placed his body in his grave. Right? But because we're living in this physical zahir world, and sometimes we don't realize that there are other systems that operate. Yes, the physical system is that the earth consumes a body. Bodies disintegrate. But Allah has another system, that there are select servants on the face of this earth, like Anbiya alayhi salatu wassalam. And the Prophet said, Inna Allah harrama ala al-ard. Allah has made it haram for the earth to consume the bodies of the Anbiya. So what is important for us as a community, and this is the broader lesson that Dr. Bhuti is conveying, is that we need to appreciate zahir and batin, and don't become fixated on a zahir to a point that you don't realize that it's a batin. Because your actions, no matter how much you strive to perfect the zahir, if the batin is not right, your actions cannot be valid. And similarly, there's no such thing of perfecting the batin while not doing the zahir. Somebody cannot claim. And therefore, Dr. Bhuti mentioned this in the hadith. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Inna Allah la yanzuru ila suwarikum. Allah doesn't look at your forms. Wala ila ajsamikum aw ajsadikum. Different narrations. Allah doesn't look at your bodies. Lakin Allah yanzur ila ma fi qulubikum. But Allah gazes at that which is in the heart. Some people, they understand thereby is that somebody commits haram and he does wrong, and then he tells you, don't judge me. You don't know what's in my heart. If you're breaking Allah's law, then your heart's not right. I know what is in your heart based on your zahir. So you cannot claim that my heart is right. You don't know. No. Dr. Bhuti says the two are connected. If the zahir is wrong, it means that the batin is wrong. But if the zahir is right, it doesn't mean that the batin is right. Right? So those are stuff to consider and to keep in mind. And he's, of course, raising this as an introduction. And then he also mentioned how different scholars refer to the zahir, the outward, and the batin with different terms. And I'm not going to mention those terms and how those terms, because it just creates unnecessary confusion at this point in time. We're all comfortable with the term outward and inward. And he wants you to know that the problems in the world that we are facing in the world today, these challenges, it emanates from where? Not over the fact that Muslims are not making Hajj. Millions of Muslims make Hajj every year. Not because we're not making Umrah. Millions make Umrah every year. Not because we're not making Salah. Everyone, the zahir of Islam is apparent. In most places we find it existing. The problem is the batin. So in the pages that lies ahead, he wants to discuss the batin. Our mashayikh, when they looked at the batin, they always gave preference to it. They considered it to be more important. And that's the essence of tasawwuf. Tasawwuf is when we focus on the batin. Not to the exclusion of the zahir. Therefore, the way of the Sa'd al-Ba'alawi, they are known to be Ghazaliyu zahir. They're Ghazalian in terms of the zahir, and they are Shadhuli in terms of the batin. Because these are approaches in which a slave wayfares and reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The way of the Shadhuliya, the way of Sidi Abul Hasan al-Shadhuli and Abu al-Abbas al-Mursi and those who followed his path, was that you focus purely on the heart, and by rectifying the heart, automatically you begin rectifying the outer. So they're not too focused upon outward actions, outward appearances. It's all about the heart. Once you rectify the heart, you rectify the outward. Whereas Imam Ghazali, rahimahullah, if you read the Ihya Ulumuddin, the whole Ihya is about the zahir. Right? Aspects of the batin as well, without a doubt, he speaks about the batin, but he gives you detail how you should look, how you should wear, how your aura should be covered, how you should make salah, the sunnah. So there's a great emphasis on the zahir. And our mashayikh, they've taken the way of, they emphasize the zahir sunnah, the zahir way of Islam. They took that from Imam al-Ghazali, and they joined it to the way of Sidi Abul Hasan al-Shadhili, where they focused on the heart at the same time. Therefore, their way was, they stressed upon the student that is studying fiqh that he must be reading tasawwuf with fiqh. Some institutions, their way is that you should only study the zahir, aspects relating to the outer practice of a person, and tasawwuf you leave that for another time, another day. But our mashayikh said, no, the two must be done together at the same time. La ilaha illallah. Sayyid Abdurragman al-Saqaf, Shaykh Abdurragman al-Saqaf, of course, is that all the members of the Ahlul Bayt that carry the title Saqaf, they're from the offspring of Shaykh Abdurragman al-Saqaf. But not only them, many, the Aidarus come from Saqaf, Shaykh Abu Bakr bin Salim come from Saqaf, many of the branches of Ahlul Bayt come from Shaykh Abdurragman al-Saqaf. He said to his son, Habib Umar al-Mihdar, he said that exert yourself in perfecting the actions of the heart, because the jurist, and by the jurist he means those who focus on the outward, they are carrying with them a qabas. A qabas is a, what did I translate it like that? It's like, I made the example, in a person when you want to start the fire, so you get a piece of wood and you start rubbing the wood an amber. You say the people that focus on the outer, they've taken with them an amber. While the Sufi that focus on the batin, he has the whole log with him. The whole log that is burning. So therefore is more emphasis on the amal, the actions of the inner. No. But both are important. And the two are interlinked. But our Shaykh, in the way people of tasawwuf, they place more emphasis on the batin. More emphasis. Because the action of the batin gives you more reward. The action of the heart gives you more reward than the action of the zahir. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said in a hadith that a person may find himself standing in front of the Baytullah, the house of Allah, fasting whole day. Like we're experiencing what it is to fast now. He said a man can stand in front of the Kaaba fasting every day of his life and praying whole day in front of the Kaaba. For all practical purposes, if you look at him, you believe this person to be the greatest wali on earth. Whole day fasting, whole day salah. And then Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the Mu'jam Kabir of Imam al-Tabrani, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, however, in his heart he has hatred. He hates the Ahlul Bayt, the family of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and on account of that, he will only be thrown into the fire of Jahannam. And that emphasizes that the action of the batin again is more weighty and important than the action of the zahir. And therefore, again, Shaykh Abdurragman al-Saqaf used to say that an uqiyah is an ounce. The ounce here equals 28 grams. That's the Islamic ounce. Today you get an ounce and you get a troy ounce. I don't know how the different measurements work in the gold market today, but an ounce here is 28 grams. He said 28 grams. An uqiyah of the actions of the heart, the batin, is better than a buhar, which was another type of measurement that equaled 243 kilograms. Call it 245. 28 grams of the actions of the heart is better than 250 kilograms of the actions of the zahir. Emphasizing again the batin. No. Subhanallah. So what this lesson impresses upon you and I to become focused on the heart. If I'm not able to draw this distinction between zahir and batin, then I can't even begin my journey of remedying the heart. I first need to acknowledge that there's this division, outward and inward. And once I acknowledge there's a division, I should know that the inward actions of the inward is far greater and superior, as how the sins of the inward is far greater and superior. The hatred of the Ahlul Bayt in the hadith we read caused a person to go to Jahannam. If I have arrogance in my heart, which is another sin of the heart, of the batin, the Prophet ﷺ said, لَن يَدْخُلَ الْجَنَّةَ مَنْ كَانَ فِي قَلْبِهِ مِثْقَالُ ذَرَّةٍ مِنْ كِبْرٍ. A person that has an atom amount of kibr within his heart will never enter Jannah. And these are the points that they were stressing over. From the actions of the heart is having a chest or a heart or a soul that is clean. Salamatu sadr. You know what a salamatu sadr? I don't hold anyone in my chest. I don't hold a grudge against anyone. Somebody wronged me, I forgive him, I pardon him. Somebody did bad to me, I free my heart from having ill thought and ill feeling towards any of the Muslims. That's one of the actions of the heart. And that's one of the greatest actions of the heart. There's Imam Suyuti in his Jamal Jawami narrates a hadith from Hakim al-Tirmidhi, Imam Bayhaqi and Ibn Abi Dunya that the Prophet ﷺ, he said that the abdal of my ummah. Who knows who the abdal are? Nobody knows who the abdal. Hey? Abdal is a station of sainthood. Al-Imam Suyuti has an interesting book where he speaks about the different levels of awliya, friends of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and titles given to them. So one sect of the awliya, that is known to be the second highest is referred to as the Abdal. And the Abdal are predominantly within Sham, Greater Syria. Greater Syria would be Palestine, Syria itself as we know it today, and Jordan. That is Sham. You see that the Abdal are predominantly from there. There's one narration that says, while the Abdal may reside within Sham, the head of the Abdal will always live in Medina al-Munawwar. So the Abdal is the high station of sainthood. What gave him the high station of sainthood? He said, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, in this hadith, it's a weak narration, that the Abdal of my ummah, they do not enter Jannah on account of much salah that they perform. Neither do they enter Jannah because of much fasting that they do. But they enter Jannah because their chests are clear towards the Muslims. Even if someone wronged them, they pardon and forgive. I'm making these examples again just to drive home the point that Imam Bhuti is trying to convey to you and I about the Zahir and the Batin. More examples we make, the more clear actions of the Batin become. From the actions of the Batin is Salamatul Sadr, having your chest clear. Now, Shaykh Bakr bin Salim was one of the great awliya of the valley of Hadramaut. I don't know, potentially the 7th or 8th generation grandfather of our Shaykh Sayyid al-Habib Umar, Shaykh Bakr bin Salim. He said that my Lord gave me a choice between two things. My sons could become from the great awliya, or their chest could be clean towards any other Muslim. And then he said, I chose for my children that their chest must be clean towards any other Muslim. Salamatul Sadr. From Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Al-Imam al-Haddad rahimahullah ta'ala said, Allah's secrets are not placed in vessels that are impure. But when the batin is pure, because why would Allah place secrets in a place that is filthy, in a place that is dirty? If I have arrogance within me, if I have jealousy within me, if I have ill thought in me, if my chest is not clean towards my Muslim brothers and sisters, then it means I'm filthy within. And if I'm filthy within, how do I expect to receive from the secrets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So Muhammad said, لم توضع الأسرار إلا في الأوعية الطاهرة النقية. Once it's pure, now you can expect to receive secrets from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is the first point, Dr. Bhuti. Of course, this is not his book. His book is going to be covered over a few days. If we want to know what the solution to the degeneration of Muslims are within the world today, then all Dr. Bhuti is telling you today, what we're starting with today is understand that there's a Zahir and there's a Batin. And that the two work together. And that the Zahir cannot be right without the Batin. And the Zahir cannot be right without the Batin. And the fact that the Batin is right is a sign that the Zahir should also be right. And that makes a person complete. And that the most perfect of the perfect was Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was the purest of the pure, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the state of his heart and his soul was such that he sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that my eyes sleep but my heart remains awake. تنام عيناي ولا ينام قلبي sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And therefore Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, did you know that any person that sleeps, when he wakes up from his sleep, he must perform wudu. Why must he perform wudu? Sleep in itself breaks the wudu because it's a place where a person is normally expected to release flatulence. Ahmed, do you know what is flatulence? Somebody please tell my son Ahmed what is flatulence. There's a place where a person is expected to break. Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, when he slept, there's many hadith from him. Rasul sallallahu slept. He woke up from his sleep, entered the masjid and led the salah. Why didn't he make wudu? Because his heart is awake. If he had to release flatulence, he would have known. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would be asleep, but his heart is awake. He's aware of what's happening around him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that's when the inner is purified, you receive secrets, you receive basira, you receive things from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that is beyond comprehension. Because it's a matter that relates to the batin. And we already established now that within our deen, within existence, within Islam, the phenomenon of zahir and batin is found everywhere. There's always a zahir reason, but there's also a batini reason. Like Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, when Sayyidina Abu Bakr passed away, radiallahu ta'ala an, he passed away because he was poisoned. So he attained the station of being a martyr, on the one hand. But on the other hand, they said the batini, the other real reason why Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala an passed away was because his desire to meet Rasulullah, his ishq. Many of the ulama said the real reason he passed away was his body couldn't bear not seeing Rasulullah anymore, not being with Rasulullah anymore. Like his wife Asma bint Umayr, she said that she found Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala, and that love that he has is also an action of the heart. And look at this action of the heart, right? His love for Rasulullah. She comes to him, he's laying with his head in his lap and he's sobbing, crying. So she wants to comfort him, what's causing you to cry? And she says that he looked up to me with tears running from his eyes and he shouted out, Wa shawqa ila Rasulullah, how I desire to be with my Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? The love of Rasul, the love of Allah and the love of the Rasul. And that ishq eventually led him to die. And with that, he also attained the reward of a martyr. Because the Prophet said in a hadith that whoever has ishq for Allah and His Rasul, a deep, intense form of love, which is an action of the heart, and then he dies because of that love, dies as a martyr. And many people died because of ishq. There's a famous story, many of you may have heard, Sayyid Ahmad narrated, narrating not too long ago, a lady that just loved, wanted to see the Kaaba, the house of Allah. And she traveled from Yemen, and every few kilometers she said, Aina Bayt Rabbi, where's the house of my Lord? Where's the house of my Lord? Where's the house of my Lord? Where's the... Until she arrived in Makkah, where's the house of my Lord? And eventually when she entered the Haram, like, you want to know degrees of love of Allah, Allah's house. Most of us, alhamdulillah, when we see the Kaaba, even if you've been to Makkah 20 times, when you enter that Haram again after a few months, and your gaze falls on the Kaaba, it brings you to tears. For different reasons. The thing that breaks my heart when I see the Kaaba, and I'm sure many can relate, is your unworthiness. I'm so unworthy, but you brought me here again, Ya Rabb. She saw Ain Bayt Rabb, when she entered the Haram and she saw the Kaaba, she went straight to the Kaaba. She never had time for dua. She went straight to the Kaaba, took hold of the Kaaba and passed away. Love. Whoever loves and dies on account of that love, dies as a martyr, said Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that hadith is sound. Shaykh Abdullah Siddiq Umari has a lengthy risala establishing the authenticity of that hadith of the Prophet Muhammad. So zahir and batin. Allah grant us tawfiq. We don't have much time. Where's the etiquette of the Quran? I introduced the etiquette of the Quran to this dars because we are in the month of Quran. Is there another copy? Only one copy. You have the Arabic. Give it to me. So the second text we're going to read, inshallah, brother. Are you reading that as well? Whoever the designated reader is the book of Imam Nawawi. The book of Imam Nawawi is the literal translation is At-Tibyan, the clarification with regard to the etiquettes of those who carry the Quran, referring to the Hufaz, but the advices apply to all of us. This is one of the most comprehensive, most brief and comprehensive works that speaks how we should be interacting with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's appropriate since we're in the month of the Quran, شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن. It's appropriate that we study etiquette with the Quran. So this won't take long, inshallah. Maybe just I think about 10 minutes or so, and then we conclude, inshallah. Bismillah. You should have one reader for the one text and a different reader for the other text. But for now, I should go. Bismillah. Let me just tell you where to start reading. Where are you going to start?
I was going to start with the Imam Nawawi's the biography of Imam Nawawi.
No.
The merit of reciting or not?
Hey?
The first chapter.
The first chapter. Let's start there. I should start with an introduction and then the...
Imam Nawawi's introduction.
No, I'm starting. Bismillah.
Bismillah. The Shaykh, legist and knowledgeable Imam, the scrupulous ascetic, the precise and skillful Abu Zakaria Yahya Muhyi ad-Din ibn Sharaf ibn Hazm al-Hazmi al-Nawawi, Allah Most High have mercy upon him, said, Praise be to Allah, the noble benefactor, possessor of infinite power, superiority and perfection, who guided us to believe and who has made our religion superior to all the rest. He graced us by sending us the one most noble unto him, the most superior of his creation, his beloved and intimate friend, his servant and messenger, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, through whom he effaced idol worship. He honored him with the miraculous Quran, which endures the passing of time. With it, he challenges humankind and jinn in their entirety, and with it, he silences the misguiders and the transgressors. He made it a comfort for the hearts of the insightful and perceptive. It does not wear out with frequent repetition and the changing of time. He made it easy to remember so that even young children may memorize it. He guaranteed its protection from being compromised by alterations and accidents, and it is indeed protected by the praise of Allah and His exaltedness. For so long as night and day endure. He made it well suited for the cultivation of his sciences for the ones whom he chooses to have skill and mastery, and he gathered therein from every discipline that which opens the heart of those who have certainty. I praise him for this and for his other innumerable graces, especially for the grace of belief. I ask him for the generous bestowal of his good favor and for myself, all my loved ones, and all other Muslims. I testify that there is no deity other than Allah, one without partner. A testimony which attains forgiveness, saves from the fire anyone who testifies it, and brings one to reside in paradise. I testify that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is his servant and messenger, the caller to belief. Allah bless him and give him peace, and his folk and companions, and honor, ennoble, and extol them until the end of time. To commence, Allah sublime and most high has graced his nation. Allah Most High increase it and its people in honor with the religion that he has chosen and the religion of Islam. He has graced them by sending Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the best of his creation. May the most eminent of blessings, bounties, and peace be conferred upon him. And he honored them with his book, the best of all speech. Allah Sublime and Most High gathered in it all that is needed. It includes stories of the first people and the last, spiritual counsel, similitudes, etiquette, and rulings of all types. And it includes clear, sure proofs indicating his absolute unity and other things that his messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam brought. Irrefutable arguments against the followers of ignoble heresies. He multiplied the reward for reciting it, ordered us to heed it and give it veneration, to adhere to it through proper conduct, and to spend generously in honoring it. Groups of the exemplary and outstanding scholars have written about the excellence of reciting the Quran, books known to people of reason and discernment. But the resolve to memorize, even peruse these books has waned, so no one benefits from them except for some exceptionally intelligent individuals. Reasons for writing the book and its structure. I have seen the people of our land, Damascus, Allah Most High protect and preserve it, and all other lands of Islam, concentrating on reciting the mighty Quran, studying, instructing, reading, and learning in groups and individually. They spend enormous effort in this day and night. Allah increase their desire for it and for all kinds of obedience, desiring thereby the pleasure of Allah, the possessor of majesty and honor. This called me to put together a concise treatise concerning the proper etiquette to observe by the bearers of the Quran and the characteristics of its students. This is because Allah Most High has prescribed showing good will towards His book, which includes illuminating the proper conduct of its bearers and students, instructing them therein, and calling their attention to it. I favor brevity and am wary of prolixity. I limit each chapter to one subject of etiquette, and for each subject, I point to a number of its categories. Most of what I mention proceeds by omitting chains of transmission, even though I have the chains of transmission readily present and have the authorization to transmit them. But my goal is to call attention to its source, and what I mentioned alludes to what I omitted. The reason for preferring brevity is my desire that it be memorized and that it be fully useful and disseminated. I singled out unfamiliar vocabulary and diction that occur in the chapters and provided a clear, summarized explanation and voweling, which I have placed at the end of the book in the order of their occurrence in the chapters. The purpose of this is to complete the book's benefit to its possessor and to remove doubt from its seeker. Included in the chapters themselves are groups of principles and invaluable lessons. See Imam Nawawi's lexicon at the end of the translation. Using weakly authenticated hadiths, I clarify the strong and weakly authenticated hadiths and ascribe each to whichever Imam related it. In some circumstances, they have overlooked hadiths, though this is rare. Know that the scholars of hadith and other permit working with weakly authenticated hadiths concerning the merits of actions. In spite of this, I restrict myself to those that are rigorously authenticated and do not mention the weakly authenticated ones except in a few circumstances. My trust and reliance is upon Allah Most Noble, and to Him is my unbridled resignation, and upon Him is my utter dependence. I ask Him that I travel the path of guidance, for protection from the people of heresy and insolence, and that I constantly be upon this and other good things with continual increase. I humbly beseech Allah Most Sublime that He grant me good deeds, that I may gain His pleasure, that He make me among those who fear Him and properly observe His rights, that He guide me to perfect intentions, that He facilitate for me all types of good, that He assist me in all excellent qualities, that He keep me steadfast in this until death, and that He does all of this for all my loved ones and all other Muslims, male and female. He is our sufficiency and the best reliance, and there is no power and strength except by Allah, the Most High, Most Great. It goes to the next chapter.
This is the second time that we're reading the Etiquette of the Quran by Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala. A few years ago at the Qalindal Masjid during Ramadan, we 200. One of the benefits of reading text in this setting that we have over here, and why we encourage brothers to acquire copies of the books, is that we know that sadly we are a community that don't read much. Right? We are a community that don't read much. But these occasions, by coming in, bringing my book, listening to the reader, I'm reading an entire text. So during the course of Ramadan, I'll cover 1.5 books that I would never have read had I been sitting at home. And similarly, our brothers and sisters that follow the stream on YouTube, similarly are encouraged to have copies of the book readily available with them so that they are able to follow the text as it's being read every day in class, inshallah, tabaraka wa ta'ala. And Imam Nawawi, rahimahullah, really doesn't require an introduction to our community, to Muslims. If I'm a student of knowledge and I don't know this great Imam, then I should be asking myself, where have I been? And Imam Nawawi, rahimahullah ta'ala, is one of those people that Allah has favored with sainthood from a young age. From a young age, Allah favored him with sainthood. And he was a young boy in his house when he already witnessed Laylatul Qadr. He saw it was Laylatul Qadr. And what happened was is that he woke up on the night of Laylatul Qadr, which is one of the... It's very interesting that Imam Nawawi witnessed the actual Laylatul Qadr when he was young, but he doesn't, in his writings of fiqh, he doesn't tell you when it was. Because Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, go and search for Laylatul Qadr in one of the odd nights of the last 10 days of Ramadan. And he repeats the same thing within his works. But when he was a young boy on one of those odd nights, he woke up and the sky was so bright that his whole house was shining bright as if there's lights everywhere in the house. Right? Like, there's load shedding because there's no lights in the Eastern. But it's so bright everywhere there's light. So he runs into the room of his mother and he sees his mother and father and he says, everywhere there's light, where's the light coming from? And the parents look around and see nothing. So they realize that our son is seeing Laylatul Qadr. Subhanallah. He was a young boy, with the youngsters that are present here with us. And he was a young boy when his friends used to try and force him to play with him and he didn't want to play. And he would cry because he didn't want to play. And when his friends would be playing, he would go sit one side reciting the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. His father had a shop. He used to buy and sell things. So his father put him in the shop to buy and sell. And he would spend all day in the shop. If customer coming, he serves the customer. If the customer leaves, he opens up the Quran, recite Quran. All day in the shop reciting Quran. From a young age, love for deen, love for Quran. He tastes the sweetness of the Quran. He reads. His father had a pious friend. The pious friend observed Imam Nawawi and he told his father, this boy you can't leave in the shop. Send him to Damascus that he go study deen. When he eventually went to Damascus, his iqbal, the way he died, unheard of. Imam Nawawi, rahimahullah, talab for deen was unheard of. Even when he became a teacher, he taught in the Dar al-Hadith al-Ashrafiyah. The Dar al-Hadith al-Ashrafiyah is a madrasa where he served almost as if he was there was no title as rector, but he was in charge of that madrasa and he taught there. And he refused to take a salary for any of his teaching. He lived in a small room. That was filled with books. For, they say, more than 10 years of his life, he couldn't sleep laying down because his room was filled with books. There was just enough place to sit. One place for him to sit and a place for another person to sit in front of him. That was it. The rest of his room was books stacked up everywhere. That's a thirst for knowledge. He, rahimahullah ta'ala, he once, when the Mughals were coming and taking over the Muslim lands, the Mughals arrived where? In Iraq. When they came into Baghdad and Basra, there was bloodshed like you cannot imagine. The historians that capture those moments when the Mughals came into Iraq and Baghdad and those places, they said that the roads were flowing with blood like rivers. Like rivers, that's how many. And who was being killed? Ulama was being killed. They took the libraries of Baghdad. Therefore, many of the manuscripts that we don't have access to today, many times in our tradition, we read about books, there's no copies available in the world. Many of them existed in those libraries. They took those libraries, hundreds of thousands of books, and burnt it up. Right? And they were an unstoppable force. Eventually, what happened is that was just after the fall of the Ayyubid dynasty. The Ayyubid dynasty is the dynasty that Shaykh Salahuddin al-Ayyubi belonged to in Egypt. The Ayyubid dynasty was taken over by the slave dynasty. One of the generals of the Ayyubid army was a person called Qutuz. Qutuz got rid of the leader and he became the leader of the slave dynasty. And they eventually fought the Mongols for the first time. And it was the first time in history that the Mongols got a defeat and a hiding was at the hand of Qutuz. So there's good things to be said about this person, Qutuz, this general now that kicked out the Ayyubids and what have you. But at the same time, in order for him to fund his war against the Mongols, because it's wars that continue, in order for him to fund his war, he required monies. And when he required monies, he forced people in Damascus and Egypt and elsewhere that they must pay towards his war. He took money from them in a haram manner. And the ulama didn't allow it. Ulama of taqwa, they stood up, they spoke out against him. Whoever spoke out against him was killed. They come to his tent, he meets them, they speak out against him, he has him slaughtered. End of it. So now what happens when a whole lot of muftis are being killed, he's getting a lot of fatwas now, it's permissible. Take the money of the masses. Apply tax to them and take their money in an unjust manner to fight your war. It's a good war and you're saving the Muslim lands. And one problem, he wants to know if everyone agreed that I can take money. He says, everyone agreed, but there's one person in Damascus. Al-Imam Nawawi is saying it's haram for you to do this. One person says it's haram. He says, bring him to me. Imam Nawawi comes to his tent. He's on the camping on the outskirts of Damascus. Imam Nawawi comes up into his tent. Imam Nawawi stands in front of him. He says, what do you say about me not usurping, but taking money? Imam Nawawi considered to be usurping, stealing. So Imam Nawawi said, as long we have been told that back home in your palaces in Egypt, you have thousands of slaves, and each slave carries with him this amount of gold. As long as you have that money with which you can support your war, to forcibly take money from the populace is haram. Qutuz then takes 2 steps in the direction of Imam Nawawi. 2 steps. And no sooner did he take those 2 steps, he takes 2 steps to the back and he sits down and he says to his guard, let this man go. So Imam Nawawi goes. So they say to him that, we saw you kill so many ulama. What stopped you from killing this man? And then everyone there would have been agreement you can take the money. He said, when I took 2 steps, you can take the money. He said, when I took 2 steps in his direction, I saw 2 lions on his shoulders, waiting to pounce upon me. When I saw that, I knew this is not an ordinary man. Let me rather step back. And Imam Nawawi rahmatullah. And therefore he was known to be an ammar bil ma'roof. He used to command with the good, naha'un anil munkar, and prohibit from the evil. And many of the Salihin mentioned that Imam Nawawi rahimahullah was the qutb of his time. Right? Which is unique. Generally, the qutb has to be from the Prophet said leadership of my ummah comes from the Quraysh. Ala kulli hal, they said he was the qutb. The attitude of scholars towards Imam Nawawi was such that Taqiyuddin al-Subki. Taqiyuddin al-Subki is one of the great ulama from Egypt. He was asked to be a qadi in Damascus. So he accepted the post, he traveled to Damascus, he only spent there for a short while and then he came back to Egypt. his attachment to Imam Nawawi, rahimahullah ta'ala. Imam Nawawi, by the way, his views are considered to be the final views in the Shafi madhab. It's just, if you think about it, a madhab that has hundreds and thousands of ulama, Imam Nawawi comes, and his expression of the madhab he gets the final say what the Shafi madhab is. That is really mind-boggling. And Imam Nawawi, Subki has such an attachment to Imam Nawawi. This is after Imam Nawawi passed on. About 100, 200 years after Imam Nawawi passes away, Imam Subki comes to Damascus. And then he writes poetry about the school where Imam Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala taught. Look at Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Look at Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. He said, وَفِي دَارِ الْحَدِيثِ لَطِيفُ مَعْنًا. In the Dar al-Hadith al-Ashrafiyya, there are hidden meanings. From the hidden meanings was that in the mimbar of the Dar al-Hadith al-Ashrafiyya, there was relics of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. From the relics of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was his na'alain sharifain, the sandals of Rasulullah was kept there. That whole masjid area in today's world are called Sufis, because they have preserved in the front of the masjid the na'alain of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the actual sandals of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We carry replicas on our heads. They had the actual sandals. So he said, وَفِي دَارِ الْحَدِيثِ لَطِيفُ مَعْنًا. And then he spoke about Imam Nawawi and he said, عَلَى بُسُطٍ لَهَا أَصْبُ وَآوِي. I find myself bowing and prostrating on the carpets of this dar, of this place, of this school. عَسَىٰ أَنِّي أَمَسُّ بِحَرِّ وَجْهِي. So that perhaps I will touch with the most important part of my face. عَسَىٰ أَنِّي أَمَسُّ بِحَرِّ وَجْهِي, with my forehead, so that perhaps I will touch with my forehead مَكَانًا مَسَّهُ قَدَمُ النَّوَاوِي, a place where Imam Nawawi once stood. That perhaps I can touch with my forehead a place where Imam Nawawi once stood. If that's his attitude towards Imam Nawawi, what do you think the attitude was to Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam? What do you think the attitude was to? They're taking barakah from Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Imam Subki was one of the great imams of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Bila niza. No one can debate that he was one of the great imams of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. So this is Imam Nawawi. And he told us in his introduction why he's writing this book. Because his community, like our community, there are lots of people that are attached to the Quran. In our society, alhamdulillah, Allah is favored our community, that people love Quran, love qira'at, love tajweed. Our community is so attached to Quran, we're very quick to criticize if somebody doesn't bacha right. But it's as if our attachment just stopped there. Our attachment to the Quran in certain circles, it's as if it just reached what? Lagu, tajweed. More than that, Allah alone knows. Right? But the Quran is more than lagu. The lagu is important. The Prophet said, adorn the Quran with your voices. Tajweed is also important. Like the instruction in the Quran and from the Prophet comes that the Quran should be recited correctly. But is the Quran just lagu and tajweed, or is the Quran more than lagu and tajweed? This book, for the very least, will place in your heart the greatness of the Quran. What Imam Nawawi is going to be discussing in here, in the first chapter, is going to be speaking about the virtue of reciting the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And now is a very good time for you and I to be hearing about the virtue of reciting the Quran. In the second chapter, he says how the Qari of the Quran and the one who teaches the Quran is more virtuous and better than anyone besides him. Like the Prophet ﷺ said that, خَيْرُكُمْ مَنْ تَعَلَّمَ الْقُرْآنَ وَعَلَّمَهُ. In the third chapter, he speaks about honoring the people of the Quran. But now, when he reaches this chapter, we already have a more clear understanding who the people of the Quran are. One of the scholars of Shaykh Abu Bakr has a detailed treatise. One of the early Salaf, he wrote a book, Who are the Ahlul Quran? What are the qualities of the people of the Quran? If you don't have these qualities, you can recite 10 khatams in a day from memory. If you don't have these qualities, you're not from the people of the Quran. By now, when we reach this chapter, we need to appreciate who are the people of the Quran, that it's essential and necessary upon us to honor them. He's going to speak about the etiquette of the teacher of the Quran and the student of the Quran, and then specifically the etiquette of the hafidh of the Quran. In the 6th chapter, I don't know if we're going to reach here, but these are important things for us. What etiquette should we adopt when reading Allah's book? Can I just open Allah's book and read any way how I want? Or is there ways for me to enhance my recitation of the Quran? I don't want to leave this. From the things that we should ensure, we should be in a state of wudu. My aura should be covered. I should face the Qibla. I should apply perfume unless I'm fasting during the day. During the day, for the person who's fasting, it's makruh to apply to wear perfume, right? I say that I see a lot of brothers using perfume in Ramadan. Apply perfume when I'm not fasting. Now Ghazali said the perfume softens the heart so that the Quran touches the heart. So we can ponder and reflect better. The objective is reflecting and pondering in the Quran. And then the next chapter speaks about etiquette of people in general towards the Quran. And then in the next chapter he speaks about special surahs of the Quran that should be recited on special occasions. And in the last chapter he speaks about writing the Quran. May Allah allow us to cover as much of this as we can, inshallah ta'ala. We're just covering introduction today of the etiquette with the Quran. We start the actual book when we meet tomorrow, inshallah ta'ala. So these are the two texts that we'll be covering. Inward sin, the greatest danger in the lives of Muslims, and etiquette with the Quran by Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala. And if we are regular throughout the month of Ramadan, imagine how much we can learn from these two great Imams. Both of them were in Damascus. Imam Nawawi came from a place, Rawha, which is outside of Damascus, and he passed away in Rawha. But his teaching and his studying was all in Damascus. Dr. Bhuti is also Dr. Bhuti is actually Kurdish. Dr. Bhuti is actually a Kurd. I don't even know who the Kurds are. I'll have that discussion another day. Right? But he was born in Damascus, lived in Damascus. I don't know if he was born there, but most of his life was in Damascus. It just so happens that both texts we are reading this year comes from scholars that had a strong bond with Damascus. May Allah bring relief to our Muslims in Syria. And may Damascus become it was a hub of ilm and knowledge and tasawwuf. May it become such a hub again. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. There's no time for a nasheed today. So we're just going to read the Du'a Khatm al-Majlis. ربنا انفعنا بما علمتنا رب علمنا الذي ينفعنا رب فقهنا وفقه أهلنا رابة لنا في ديننا أنثى وذكر تدي قولا وفعلا كرما وارزق الكل حلالا دائما
وصلاة الله تغشى المصطفى من إلى الحق دعانا والوفاء في كتاب فيه للناس شفاء وعلى الآل الكرام الشرفاء وعلى الصحب المصابيح الغرر. اللهم اهدنا بهداك واجعلنا ممن يسارع في رضاك ولا تولينا وليا سواك ولا تجعلنا ممن خالف أمرك وعصاك. وحسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. يا ربنا اعترفنا بأننا اغترفنا وأننا أسرفنا على لظى أشرفنا فتب علينا توبة تغسل كل حوبة واستر لنا العورات وآمن الروعات واغفر لوالدينا ربي ومولودينا والأهل والإخوان وسائر الخلان وكل ذي محبة أو جيرة أو صحبة والمسلمين أجمع. آمين ربي اسمع فضلا وجودا منانا باكتساب منا بالمصطفى الرسول نحظى بكل سول بالمصطفى الرسول نحظى بكل سول بالمصطفى الرسول نحظى بكل سول صلى وسلم ربي عليه عد الحب وآله وصحبه عداد طش الصحب والحمد لله في البدء والثناء سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين في كل لحظة أبدا عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته.
Purify our hearts in the Quran. Prophet's attachment to the Quran. Our adab with the Quran. Allowing us to go to recite the Quran today. Ya Rabbi, each and every one of us is present and those who are following the stream. Each and every one of us at the present and those following the stream allow us to recite the maximum number of khatams we can possibly during this month of Ramadan. Ya Rabbi, let time not go to waste in things that are displeasing to you. Ya Rabbi, let our time not go to waste in things that causes you to become angry. With the intention, Ya Rabbi, that you make this Ramadan the best of Ramadans. That you brought us all to reach you. Allahumma ja'alna min al-wasilina ilayk. Allah subhanahu, with an intention that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala purify our ways and purify our character. That He subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to attain high stations of sainthood and wilayah and proximity to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ya Rabbi, we don't have the capacity to draw close to you, so you draw us close to you. And we don't have the capacity to exert ourselves in ibadah, so we ask of you to grant us the tawfiq and the energy and the himmah to exert ourselves in ibadah. Ya Rabbi, let us, with the setting of the sun of every day in the month of Ramadan, let it sit with our sins. Let it sit with our wrongdoings. لا إله إلا الله بهذه النوايا والما سلمنا صالح وأنا وسيد الحبيب عمر وإلى حضرة النبي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم
وبارك عليه وعلى آله وصحبه. الفاتحة.
صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله. You never did the adhkar before the Fatiha.